Good morning, guys. Today I woke up to some pretty cool news about what's coming up in Guild Wars 2, so I decided to do a video. We're going to be talking about the changes to traits. If you don't want to listen to me describe it to you, there will be a link in the description down below. These changes are really big. They're changing the way traits work in a huge way and in a particularly exciting way that I'd love to share with you all very soon, and we can have a bit of a discussion on how exactly this is going to go down. This comes as the first blog post in many blog posts detailing what is changing with the April feature pack. For those out of the loop, we've been having lots of small patches recently that have been giving us actual content and story-based stuff, the Living World updates that have been going on. Well, now that Living World Season 1 is over, we're having a slight gap before we go to Season 2, and in that gap, they're releasing what's known as the feature pack. They were giving us, like, features slowly trickling into the game along with Living World updates recently, but this time they've decided, no, we're going to stop doing that. We haven't really seen many gameplay changes since New Year's, if you think about it. They've stopped, they've held it all back, and it's all going to go into the game in one huge update, which looks like it's going to be massive. So now on the official website, you can see a list of all these bugs they're going to be talking about. Today, we got Traits Unleashed, which describes huge changes to traits, and 40 new traits that are coming into the game. And here's just a selection of some of the new ones that are coming out. Tomorrow, we're getting the Art of Combat and an article on the critical damage changes. One called A New Way to Explore the Looks of Guild Wars 2, a colourful outlook, looking for group. There's loads of stuff, okay? So ArenaNet are going to keep doing these blogs, and I'm going to be really happy to keep you guys up to date with how they're going. So today, let's have a look at traits, and then I'll begin with that meaty stuff, and then we'll go on to other things about the patch and data mining towards the end of the video. Well, first of all, before giving us all the new traits, it just describes the core changes to the system. Change number one that I think a lot of people are going to be happy about because there's another bit of freedom. I'm usually quite wary about games adding more freedom to players because I feel like it reduces depth in gameplay, but they are giving us more freedom in that now traits come completely for free as we're leveling up. Currently in game, if you make a new character, when you get to a certain level, you have to buy a book from a profession merchant who will unlock your next tier of traits. You guys know how there's Adept, Master, and Grandmaster tier traits. That's sort of an arbitrary distinction in a lot of ways. It does mean that as you go deeper into tree, traits get stronger, but really this comes from the fact you're supposed to buy books. Now, I remember very early on in the betas that their reason for introducing these books, which is really one of the only reasons you speak to these trainers except to refund your traits, back during betas, one of the key reasons they added these books into the game in the first place was because they wanted significant moments as you're leveling up. Like, you take these books away, and most of Guild Wars 2, especially after level 30, once you've unlocked your utility skills, it's just kind of this sludge of going through and grabbing another trait point and grabbing another trait point. And they wanted to have, like, these significant moments, these level thresholds you're excited to get to, where you unlock this next thing, this next tier of your traits. And so now they're removing that completely, and that seemed very suspect to me as I was reading through this article. I was thinking to myself, well, it wasn't the greatest feature in the world, but I can understand why they had it. Why are they removing it at all? And so I will come back to this thought, because they explain why very well going forward. So now you no longer need books, and the question comes, what's your character progression going to be like from level 30 to level 80? Because don't forget, at least all the way up to level 30, you're excited about unlocking your utilities and finally your elite skill. Well, here's how they've done it. When you hit to level 30 now, you don't just unlock an elite skill, but you also unlock those first traits. This means, as far as I can see from the article, you don't get traits before level 30. The Adept tier comes at 30, so that's when you start to play with these things. It could mean it gets a bit boring while you're in the early game, but it also means that level 30 is now a huge milestone for you. You're like really excited to get there because you finally start to get to work on your traits. Then they've pushed back where you get the other tiers. You get Master tier instead of Grandmaster now at level 60, and Grandmaster comes at level 80. And again, I quite like this because in Guild Wars 2, level 80 is kind of weird because it doesn't mean that much. You hit level 80 and yeah, you get that final trait point, but by then you could already be 30 deep into two separate lines, and you don't get like that ding, you don't get that massive moment where you're like, oh yeah, I finally get a Grandmaster trait. No, that doesn't happen, does it? Because you've already had Grandmasters before, and it's just like a tiny little bit of extra convenience. Largely level 80 is fun because it means, oh, all this exotic gear that I probably can't afford anyway is now available to me, especially on your first character, and it just sort of feels like this arbitrary limit. I do think then that now the early game of Guild Wars 2 before level 30 is going to be slightly more boring leveling up because there's no traits to put any points into at all, But after level 30, after level 30, it looks like it's going to be a much more strong system. That said, I'll tell you the next thing that they're changing, and that's they're condensing what trait points are worth, okay? Currently, every time you level up, you get another trait point, which you can put in. Now, a single trait point in Guild Wars 2, especially if it's not just ticked you over to a minor trait or a major slot trait, really can feel incredibly insignificant. Getting plus 10 healing power and vitality when you're in like a level 70 zone kind of sucks. It means that yes, you level up and you get to click something, but very rarely do you feel the oomph of actually applying those traits. Well, they're condensing it now, and now basically every single point is worth what 5 of the old points were. This means every single time you apply a trait point, you're gonna be going immediately into a minor or a major trait. Think about the way like build websites work, right? A lot of them cut out the fat. They don't require you to click 30 times to get into a tree. They require you to click just a few times, and every time you click it jumps you 5 up, 5 up, 5 up. It's pretty much never a good idea in Guild Wars 2 to go into a trait line that's not a multiple of 5. Like if you go 11 into a line, you're doing it wrong. And they even say in this blog post, oh, our old system allowed some people to go 11 in one line and 14 in another line, and this seems stupid. And I can't really fathom how dumb you'd have to be to do that and not appreciate that it's kind of a bad move. But I guess there are some people out there, and it safeguards against that. But it does mean now, the most important about this condensing change, it does mean that every time you want to apply a trait, you feel a bit of a difference. Maybe not a huge difference if you've just picked up a minor, but definitely if you've just gone into a major slot, then that's actually going to feel rewarding. And especially the fact that you're getting 50 of both attributes at once instead of just 10, you're going to finally feel something from spending every single trait point. It should be more rewarding. That does have a downside though. It means now, even after level 30, every time you level up, you don't always get a trait point to spend. And again, I question this. I worry a little bit about this. I like in RPGs leveling up and having a decision to make somewhere with my character. Maybe spend some points in some attributes, maybe go descend down a skill tree somehow. That's really fun, and it means in Guild Wars 2 now, most of the time while you're leveling up, you're not, all the way up to level 30, you're not applying trait points, and through very few of the levels even after level 30, because there are so many less now, you can only get 14 trait points now, instead of like 70, which were available before. Now, because of this, it means there's going to be a lot of levels where you level up and you're like, oh yeah, I've leveled up. It doesn't mean anything. I've got to wait until I get my next trait. So it's a bit of a balancing act. I feel like Guild Wars 2 would have worked really well. Early like convention footage we saw of this, they used to have a system where separate from traits, you would be able to go into your hero panel and directly add stats to, say, vitality or toughness or power. And that I always like. I feel like under Guild Wars 2's new trait system, with that idea of every time you level up, you get to put some points just in attributes while waiting to get more trait points. That could be really fun, but obviously the game doesn't have that. And so, I don't know, the leveling experience is going to be weird. I do think overall it's going to be better, but it will be a little bit disappointing having so many levels now where I can't apply any traits at all. Alright, here's the next big thing, and it's in the name of freedom for people, which again makes me sort of wary of it a little bit, but the ability to refund your trait points anywhere. In PvP at the moment, it's totally free if you want to retrait. You can just do it anytime, obviously not while you're in a match. But that wasn't available in PvE. It was a bit of a gold sink, and kind of a really bad gold sink, actually. With the amount of inflation that's in Guild Wars 2 now, and the fact it only costs a couple of silver, even at level 80, to refund your trait points, I feel like this gold sink has become quite insignificant, and so they're not scared of getting rid of it at all. You know, what's the better thing to do here? Get rid of the gold sink, or try and hike the prices up so that actually matters? No one's going to be happy if with these trait changes they upped the price of refunding all your trait points, so they've just got rid of it completely. So now, no matter where you are in PvE, they say as long as you are not in combat, you can retrait. That's got some crazy implications. First of all, like, that's just quite exciting to casual people who are just thinking, oh, I want to try new builds, and we're so tight that the cost of waypointing to a guy and spending 2 silver was too much for them to try and test new builds. You can now do it whenever you like. But beyond that, it was making me think of dungeons and fractals. Anytime you're out of combat, you can change your traits. You guys realize that this means if you have multiple gear sets in your inventory, you can now, in theory, completely change your party comp in the middle of a dungeon. If you're suddenly struggling on a boss and you think, oh, we don't have enough damage, or we don't have enough of this, usually it's always going to be we don't have enough damage, you can just swap right then and there. I mean, that's a pretty crazy idea. So I don't know whether it's going to be disabled in those types of content, but they certainly didn't say it would be, and that will change like the way that dungeon running is done in a huge way, especially now that there are so few points to spend and like it's not such a pain to constantly be clicking and doing it. I can imagine myself certainly constantly retraining and thinking, yeah, I'll quickly swap this out, ding 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 ding, done, you know, a couple of clicks and I've got my full build back up and I'm on a completely different set. Very, very interesting. I also find it kind of funny that very recently they added to the gem store the ability to refund all your traits anywhere, and now that's just going to be a feature of the game. It seems kind of short-sighted and maybe something they've only just come up with. If you guys want to see what the new trait page looks like in its sort of new 14-point form, there will be a screenshot on the footage in the background right now, so you can check that out. And now you might be thinking to yourself, are they getting rid of the profession trainers then? I mean, what are the profession trainers for? Number one, while leveling up to buy a book. Number two, to refund your trait points. You now have neither of those in Guild Wars 2. Are they just removing these NPCs? And again, this was something to me that, in the name of freedom for the players, they now seem to have reduced depth to the game world. Like, as arbitrary as it may have been to constantly go to these profession trainers, it was at least another NPC you could go out and see in the world. I've talked about this before, but one of my most disappointing experiences with Guild Wars 2 was when I went to Gw2 for the first time, and I saw this beautiful village with all this intrigue and mystery there, but there was nothing to do. Like, I saw all of these different merchants, but all the vendors sell the same thing globally across the game. There's no unique food. There was like nothing to do, no depth. And so this is sort of the same thing. These are more merchants. These are more unique areas to be going to, more aspects of the gameplay, things to visit, to change stuff up that's been removed again, just so that we can have the convenience of doing everything from within our own UI. And you know, that disappointed me slightly. However, here we go. This is why I'm most excited about the changes to the traits. A big, in my opinion, the best change that they've made is that the major traits, you know, all the things that you pick when you get 10 into a line, all those major traits are going to be locked. So here, no, this is not freedom this time. They're locking stuff out, but here's how you unlock them. To unlock them, there is a specific item somewhere out in the world of Tyria that will let you learn that trait. Okay, I quote the devs specifically from the blog here so you guys understand. You can find trait guides by completing specific content in the world, like story dungeons, mini dungeons, world versus world, personal story, specific bosses, and discovering certain areas on the world map. And they make a direct comparison to the first game, where as you explored the world, you would find different vendors that sold you different skills. And a core element of character progression in the first game, and in many RPGs, was the idea of exploring. You find some hidden wizard and he gives you a new ability, right? That was never in Guild Wars 2. You can unlock all of your utility skills, again, arbitrarily through the UI. You unlock all of your weapon skills automatically just with use. There was never any of this idea of exploring and being rewarded with stuff for your character about the world, but now there is. All of these major traits are going to be specific things you can go out and explore to get. They start locked. I'm guessing for level 80 players who have already completed their personal story, you'll just already have the personal story based ones unlocked. But think about it, guys. There are tons of traits in this game across all of the professions. A lot of traits, and to think that every single one of those has a unique position out in Guild Wars 2 adds a lot of depth to the world map. And that idea of the profession trainers being, you know, removed and, oh, here's another thing we can't do, it doesn't mean anything. My little story just now about Gw2, for future players leveling up in Guild Wars 2, maybe you're a necromancer, you go to Gw2 and it's there that you learn one of your core minion master traits. That's a really cool idea, you know, by completing the skill point there, or speaking to one of the NPCs, or getting the point of interest that leads right up next to the Wizard's Tower. That is cool. Completing personal story missions gives you, say, a really awesome grandmaster that you hadn't thought about using before. This is rewarding, and it's rewarding through exploration, which is exactly what I've always wanted. They specifically say there that they wanted exploring the world to be a component of character progression. However, they also say, we appreciate some people might be annoyed by this because, again, it's reducing freedom, and a lot of people see that reduction of freedom and then, you know, spaz out because it means they have to do things in the game, and somehow that's not fun to them. So, to appease that audience as well, who I totally don't agree with, by the way, they are giving you the ability to buy straight up all of these major traits if you want to. If you don't want to go and explore the world, if you don't want to see all the little things that they add about there, you can just buy them straight up. It will obviously cost you money, but you get them from the profession trainers. So not even the profession trainers are useless. They're still in the game. They still have a point. It means whenever you see a profession trainer, say as you're leveling up, you can go over to them and see, oh, okay, maybe this time I want to buy this specific trait. I don't know where I'll find it or when, so I'll just grab it now. I know it's a really big part of my build. And so they all still have a use. In fact, more of a use, I would say, than they originally did. Specifically while leveling up, people didn't change their build that much, so they would ignore most of the profession trainers, who largely were just there for books or retraiting. Now, every time you see one, you might want to have a little chat with them and see, you know, what maybe water magic traits, for example, they're selling, because you just got a little bit deeper in that line, but you don't have anything for the slot yet. This is really exciting to me. I think that they've done everything very well in terms of exploring the world to unlock that stuff, and they've cut a lot of the fat out of the trait system. Constantly putting just one little point in and not getting any real reward from it, but now you get specific levels where you really feel like, oh yeah, this made a difference to my build. I've got something extra every time. You always feel the difference. That's really strong, and I appreciate it a lot. They've cut a lot away from what made the trait system unnecessarily complex, but all the big build-making decisions are still there. So, let's talk about traits specifically. This is how this blog post ends. After they describe everything that they're changing with the system, they basically say every single line for every single profession is getting a new grandmaster. Currently, there are 2 grandmasters at the end of every trait line, and a lot of the times, if a line doesn't have a good grandmaster, often you won't find any suitable builds for that line. Well, what they've done is add 1 new grandmaster to every single one, so instead of 2 grandmasters to choose from, you've now got 3, and they've revealed 1 from each profession. So 1 of 5 has now been announced for each profession. I'll just go through those for you guys. The first one they announced was for Elementalist. It's called Aquatic Benevolence. Sounds like a water magic grandmaster they're introducing. This trait contains a new mechanic that will increase all healing to allies by a percentage without affecting the character doing the healing. Aquatic Benevolence has the highest of all outgoing healing effects currently in the game, sitting at a solid 25% healing power bonus when supporting allies. Pretty interesting. I did just do a video on heal power and why I feel like it's bad, and I actually think a flat boost to how strong, you know, you can heal people up won't make it the be-all and end-all, and actually, even with this Grandmaster, I still probably don't think that a healing power Elementalist is a viable thing to do. But it's nice, and it's another one of these small changes that's hopefully going to make support viable sometime in the future. The next one is for Engineer, Fortified Turrets. This thing means that every time you summon a turret, if you take this Grandmaster, it puts a protective bubble around the turret, letting it reflect projectiles, and that works with Supply Crate as well, so you're going to get a bunch of them come out. For PvP, I'm not really sure it's going to be that amazing. Like, one thing people say turrets aren't good for is their defense, but honestly, there's a lot of non-projectile stuff that just cleaves through them anyway. Projectile stuff typically means you have to be targeting it, and not many people target turrets. They just get cleaved down in AoEs. So, and that's not universally true. There are some projectiles that work outside of that, but largely PvP, I'm not sure it will see that much use. Could be wrong. PvE, it could be more interesting since reflection is really strong, and you can now choose to drop a turret down just at the right time to reflect a bunch of stuff. And obviously the synergy with Supply Crate sounds pretty cool too. The next one is Guardian, Force of Will, and it basically just gives the Guardian a ton of vitality. Guardian's like one major downside is like its vitality. It's got strong armor values, it's got base ways of healing itself, but like that's supposed to be balanced by its low vitality nature, and now you can just get an instant 3,000 health from taking this trait. The next one is Necromancer. It's called Unholy Sanctuary. It's a death magic trait that basically gives you health regeneration to your regular health while you're in Death Shroud. So you can be slowly healing yourself up while protected by your life force. They specifically say in the description, hey, this is so that you can turtle in Death Shroud to heal yourself back up. That's very much in line with what the Necromancer is, you know, kind of attritive, health slowly going up and enemy health slowly going down. I quite like it. By the way, for none of these, I'm going to say, oh, this is OP or this is not OP, because really you can't tell until you see it in the game environment. The Mesmer one's really cool. Actually makes me want to play a Mesmer. It's called Power Block. This is a specific reference to an elite skill in the first game. It was an interrupt ability, and if you interrupted that skill, it would not only disable that skill and put it on a huge cooldown, but every other ability that was in the same attribute line as it. There's no real equivalent in Guild Wars 2 for how that worked, but it was a really cool elite interrupt for Mesmers in the first game. Now it's a Grandmaster in the second game, and the way it works is every time you interrupt someone, and Mesmers can have a fair few interrupts, you know, as long as they're stripping the stability away, every time you interrupt them, instead of going on a short cooldown, now it goes on a really big cooldown, a 10-second cooldown every time you interrupt someone. That's actually pretty huge for if you manage to interrupt a heal skill. Guild Wars 2, it's like, oh, I got interrupted, that's fine, I'll just recast it super soon afterwards, because skills don't go on their full cooldown. Well, a 10-second cooldown is enough to really finish someone off, and they even say in the description here, oh yeah, you interrupt a Necromancer using consume conditions, and they're basically screwed. And it's so true. Really cool, and because it's like a trait that's proccing off of all your interrupts, it makes me want to, like, see and interrupt Mesmer. That could be so fun. You know, and we see a little bit of that, I guess, lately, but mostly through the damage with Halting Strike by going Confounded Suggestions. But still, it's nice, and it will be something I'm playing with. Another reference to Guild Wars 1 immediately for the Ranger, Read the Wind. First game, this was an ability. It was a preparation, and it meant that while it was active on you, like, you'd kneel down and you'd read the wind and you'd stand up, and then every time you fired projectiles, they would go super, super quick and do more damage. It's basically the same thing here in Guild Wars 2. It's now Grandmaster. That means all your projectiles move twice as fast. Think about Longbow. One of the kind of annoying things, especially when you're at super long range with Longbow, is that they're kind of plinky and slow. Well, this makes it really, really quick and allows you to be more accurate, which I think could be quite strong with Longbow because it allows you to stay at like that 1500 range, get the extra damage on the auto, and still be, you know, hitting people very quickly. The next one is Thief, Invigorating Precision. This means every time you crit, you get health back. Probably the least interesting to me, honestly, of all of them. And Warrior gets Dual-Wielding Agility, which increases your attack speed by 10% while wielding an offhand axe, mace, or sword. Attack speed increase. So, you know, we've got quickness in Guild Wars 2, but just base, this increases your attack speed. Has not been a mechanic we've seen. This is something new as far as I can see. And again, this was a big thing from the first game. Like, attack speed increasing skills were the shit. Everybody loved them. And now we've got this going on here as well for the Warriors. That will be very interesting. And again, a trait I'd love to try out while playing my Warrior. That's it. That's all the ones that they announced. That's how the trait system has changed. I would love to hear what you guys think. I'm super excited about it. I do want to wrap up the video with just a couple of other updates about some things going on in the community. You'll also find links in the description to this. You guys should know more data mining was done on the most recent patch, and it was found that a PvE locker seems to be somewhere on the horizon. It's going to be associated, at least from the data mining, with something called transmutation charges. This is at least something the devs are playing with, and I guess the idea is it's sort of like transmutation stones. You spend these charges, and it allows you to pull anything out of your locker or put anything into your locker. Looks good. Obviously, it's not a guaranteed feature. The devs have been tight-lipped about it, but it was data mined along with some other things. There'll be a link. And also, the most prominent data miner, that Shaman, also put up a post on Reddit about how the living story changed over the months after that big leak happened. You guys remember there was a huge leak and everyone found out about Mordramoth before things were coming out? Well, during that leak, there was actually a lot more information about, for example, Marjorie's death. People thought for sure that Marjorie was going to be dead, and there was tons of evidence for it that was data mined from the game, like loads of huge conversations between characters that never ended up in the finale. So it was it's like a really interesting glimpse into one proposed way that the story could have ended from ArenaNet. He's posted it all up there. It's a fascinating read, and I'd love you guys to check it out. Finally, some stuff from the previous video I never talked about. This is going to seem so shoehorned in. There's a new cave in Lion's Arch. I never mentioned it because I never found it. They've added this really nice little cave quite near to the Dominion of Winds wall in Lion's Arch, and there's a few other interesting things as well. There was a boss that was really buffed up in honor of the waves, and there are other cool little things you can see in Lion's Arch too. Like, you can actually swim down where the drill was, and you'll see like this purple magical aura down there as you go deeper down the hole. Eventually you can't swim into the ley line. Sorry about that, guys, but it's pretty interesting down there anyway. But that's pretty much it, guys. Yes, that was super shoehorned in. Talk to me about traits. I want to hear what people think. I'm so excited about this exploring the world thing. I have two characters I've never put to level 80, a Guardian or a Ranger. I kind of want to save at least one of them for when Tengu come out, but after this patch goes live, I don't know, guys. I might re-level like that to have that experience of unlocking like a new ability almost. I know it's a trait, it's not actually an ability, but for completing like a personal story step or for exploring somewhere. And you know, oh man, what if they do add something to Garenhof and I can get that experience that I always wanted? Oh, that would be so cool. I'd love to hear what you guys think. And what about the traits themselves? Are you guys actually excited about what you heard for your profession? Don't forget, that's just one of 5 that's coming to your profession. But I think already they seem kind of cool. There were some elites leaked a while ago as well that seemed crazy, and we might hear information about in one of these future blogs. I'll keep you guys posted though. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you're excited about the feature patch. I am now, and I will see you next time. This is just like the first of a bazillion posts as well, so we'll see how it goes.